Today, Fox will be teaching you how to configure a new edge router. This edge router will be different from the first video. It will be focusing on the Ubiquiti Edge Router X series. Ubiquiti has a very strong, powerful firewall and graphical user interface for their edge routers that is a little bit more intuitive than the TP-Link router. So we'll check up how to set up the basic settings such as the DNS server, the DHCP server, along with the basic routing. So let's begin. The first step is to plug your computer directly into the unit. Usually you want to plug into port 1, or you could plug into port 4. Right now I have my computer plugged into port 4, so it should hypothetically work. Then from there you want to change your Ethernet to reflect the proper IP address of the default gateway for that router. So we go into control panel here, we go to small icons, we click on network and sharing, and then we click on change adapter settings. From here it's adapter 77, so we double click that, and then we click on properties. From here, it's going to pull up the Ethernet and NIC properties. We want to disable Internet version 6, and we want to double click inside of Internet Protocol version 4. And we want to assign a new IP address. So it's 192.168.1.33. We'll set the default subnet mask as what it is right now, and then the default gateway is the IP of the router, so that would be 192.168.1.1. For DNS we can leave blank, we don't necessarily need a DNS right now. Click OK, click OK. Then from there you want to pull up an internet page and type up 192.168.1.1. Okay, so the configuration port does need to be plugged into port 1, as I was saying before. This is where your computer is going to be plugged in. Alternatively, what you could do is connect your internet to the last port, which is port 4 here. They start with 0, so this is port 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 could be served as the internet connection. I already have this part of the router connected to my main internet service provider's router, so I don't have to reconnect it. But as you can see, you go to the 192.168.1.1 webpage, and from here you want to configure the router for the first time. So we go click on proceed to unsafe, and the default username is actually UBN. So I'll go ahead and pull that up now. So as you can see, the username is UBNT and the password is UBNT for the first time you log in. Then it will ask you if you want to do the basic setup for your router. This is good to follow. It's very self-explanatory, so I recommend definitely setting it up the first time. This way, if you're a more advanced user, you could set it up using your default policy settings for your network. But for this video, in this case scenario, we will do the basic setup. So we click on yes. From here, we want to assign a static IP. So I know the IP address of my main router. So what I will do is enter in the IP address of 192.168.0.55. And let's do this as the subnet mask. Let's see, yeah, we could also do 24. So we'll enter as 24 for the subnet mask. The gateway is going to be the main internet service provider router. So that's 192.168.0.1. And the DNS server, let's go ahead and select Google. From here, we could assign multiple LANs. For this case scenario, we will only have one LAN. So let's go ahead and keep only use one LAN. And the IP address of this device we want to change to 10.2.0.1. And we will keep the default scheme, the subnet mask here. We want to enable the DHCP server as well. And then we want to create a new admin user. You would enter in your new username and then the password. And then you want to click on apply. So I'll go ahead and do that and click on apply. Okay, so it will ask you if you want to apply the changes. We go ahead and select apply changes. Actually, let's do not now yet. Let's go back up here and make sure that the port for the internet is at 4. We decided that port 4, or the last port on this router, will be connected in delivering the internet. So go ahead and click on apply. Click on apply changes and reboot. And yes, I'm sure. So the system will reboot. We have to access it from a different IP address. So we will go ahead and take care of that in just a moment. So we go back to the internet properties here for the Ethernet 77. And we want to change the properties one more time. We go back over here, we pull up the Internet Protocol version 4, and instead of the IP address on the 192.168.1 scheme, we want to change it to the 10.2.0 scheme. So we could keep it still at 33, that's perfectly fine. Subnet mask could be default, and then we just change the default gateway to 10.2.0.1, and we could also add a DNS server. That would be Google. Click OK, and it's going to identify, as you can see the status, it does have internet, and here are the details. So now hypothetically we should be able to access the router from that IP address. So let's go ahead and go back over here. And as you can see, we could access the router now at 10.2.0.1. So we click on advanced, proceed to unsafe, and then we log in. Okay, after you enter in your username for the first time, you will be logged into your device. So what I like to do is set my specific adapter connected to this router as DHCP, so it could pick up an automatic IP address, just to make sure that it's delivering the IP address properly. So before that, we go over here to services, we click on service, and we click on DHCP server tab. As you can see here, the pool size is 206 devices. There's 0 devices on there. And it is active. So let's go to view leases and go to static mapping and details. And let's go ahead and add the domain, because I will be putting a domain on this specific router along with the other one. So we have 2 domains. We have one on the other edge router and then another domain on this specific router. So go ahead and do that, save. And hypothetically, if we go back over here to the network controller, we change the properties. And inside of properties, we want to change the Internet Protocol version 4 to automatically obtain an IP address and automatically obtain a DNS server. Click OK and OK. It will think for a couple seconds, it will recalibrate, pick up a new IP address, click on details, and as you can see, our router is delivering the proper IP address that we want. So we got a new IP address of .38. We're on the proper subnet mask, and we do have the proper default gateway, DHCP server, along with the DNS servers. So this is so far good. Click close, close, and close this. And now we could go into the deep diving configurations of this device. So the first area is the dashboard. This is going to give you a graphical representation of your entire network. It will show all of your DHCP servers, all of your firewall rules, according to the numbers, the NAT rules, the OSPF rules, along with the routes. So as you can see, we have the routing table here. It displays all the interfaces. And so far, it looks good. So the first thing that we want to do is definitely consult the manual and see and read all the different features to get a deeper understanding as to what this router could do. Like I said, this router is a lot more powerful than the TP-Link router, so it could do a lot more, and it's a little bit more graphical, user-friendly. So if we look at the Chapter 1 overview, as you can see, Edge OS is a powerful, sophisticated operating system for the Ubiquiti networks, and it allows you to manage your edge router and networks efficiently. So there's a few configuration ideas in the first overview. So as you can see, there's a service provider deployment. That's if you're going to be an internet service provider that provides internet or services to the general public. So we're not going to be doing that, but we will be doing the corporate deployment. So this scenario uses a single edge router and then 3 independent interfaces connecting to the following. So we have the cloud, the DMZ, and then the LAN. So DMZ would be used for putting specific servers on a network. So say you want to put a web server or anything facing to the public on the DMZ zone, you would do that. It's fairly self-explanatory. So what we want to do is configure the host name, the time zone, the gateway, the name server, and the domain name, along with the NTP. And then we configure the interfaces and DHCP, the NAT, and firewall rules. So let's go to the first part. If we go over to our edge router, we want to find something that says system. Here in this system, we want to change the host name, do a couple of things that we find will be useful for this device. So instead of using the default gateway, let's just call it edge route. This is the new system name. We want to use coordinated universal time, so that's perfectly fine. So if your routers are stored and are in multiple areas in the world, you want to select UTC. However, we want to select a time zone. So we click on Americas, and we just select our region here, United States, and we're Pacific. System domain, we want telefoxcorphq.com. NTP, we want automatically updated. We could add a new name server as well. So this is going to be a server that we will eventually deploy on the network. So we go ahead and add that. We do want to allow SSH to the server. Telnet should be disabled, that's fine. System log, this is good for logging certain system errors. So we will do that as well. We go ahead and go type up the following IP address. So these systems aren't created yet, but eventually they will be created, and we will have a system log logging all the files. The SNMP agent we will leave blank for now because I don't have one deployed, and the UNMS connection will be disabled as well. So let's go ahead and save these changes. Okay, so the changes are saved. We have the appropriate information for our system. And now what we want to do is go ahead and click on warning. Let's go ahead and save one more time. And then if we want, we could always back up our config file. We won't do that until we have this router completely up and running, have potentially a VPN running, and some other things. So we will worry about that later. So as you see on the dashboard overview page, you will have the CPU usage, the RAM usage, and the uptime of the router. You also have your Unify management system you could connect to. This is a general tool that allows you to manage multiple Ubiquiti products. Then you have your CLI. This is your command line. This allows you to log into your router using the CLI and execute different programs and commands. Then you have your toolbox. You could ping different devices. You could find out your bandwidth, your trace route, discovery of devices, and log monitor. So if we click on ping, we could ping specific destination host and the packet count and size. That's if you're wanting to ping a certain server and you don't know if it's up and running. Bandwidth. Looks like you could run a bandwidth test as the sender and as a receiver. So let's go ahead and do that. So receiver IP address. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's do the IP address of the computer. That was 35 here. So it will run the test, give you results. I don't think we should wait for the results. It looks like it's taking a while. And then if you click on receiver, same general principle, you just click on run test and it will go through the process, probably take some time. And then it will show you the results. Next is trace route. This allows you to trace the path to a certain IP. Say, for example, if we want to trace the path of our computer to the router. Let's do that. Let's trace the path to the main router. And as you can see, it's not producing anything. This could be a glitch in the system. Typically, it's similar to trace route in the command line. So you would just trace route and an IP address. And it would go through the trace routing process and show you the route it took to get to that specific device, internet site, or router. It's good for troubleshooting if you can't find out what's going on in your network and you're trying to find where the network is breaking up. You could actually find the path where it ends the connection. So very useful for troubleshooting. Then you have Discover. So let's see, what is this? Discover allows you to discover all the devices on your network along with hardware. Yeah, so you see this is the main router IP address from the IPS and the console. And let's see, that does it all. That's how that works. And log monitor. So the log monitor is not on currently right now. Or at least no messages are being populated. And then you have packet capture, so you could actually capture packets similar to Wireshark. However, Wireshark is a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more powerful but this is a packet capture unit as well. So just take note of that. On the dashboard, you have some other information, the connection status, and some of the local information of the network. We could add VLANs here on this specific router. However, for my case scenario, we will use a switch to connect to this router. And inside of this switch, we would do all the VLAN routing to create virtual LAN networks. So we're not doing the VLANing directly on this router. But just take note that it is possible to do VLANing inside of the Edge Max router. So to create a virtual LAN for your network, for your switch, you click on Add Interface, click on Add VLAN. You would give it a number. For this case scenario, we give it the number 800. And from here, we can't add a VLAN to any of the following ports. 0 through 4, we cannot add. However, we can add a VLAN ID to the switch. So we do that, and we give it a new description. We use DHCP, and then click on Save. And then we go over to the switch. As you can see, we have 3 VLANs, 550, 700, and 800. Then from there, we want to go over here to configure the switch. Go to VLAN. Click on VLAN Aware, Enable, and then for port 1, we want to change it to 500. Port 2, let's change that to 700. And for port 3, let's change it to 800. Click on Save. So hypothetically, for these devices, the port virtual location will be associated with each VLAN that we created, and then we just apply that VLAN number to the PVID along with the VID. So that's how you deploy your virtual private networks or your VLANing on your new Edge router. Okay, let's create a few more VLANs so that we get comfortable with the deployment process. So we go over here to all, click on Interface, click on VLAN, and from here we want to first give it a number. I already created a network map, so I do have specific VLAN numbers for specific areas of my network. So I'll give this one 400. Go to Switch, and we type in the category for this. So this would be smart lights. And we could give it a specific IP, or we could have it on the same address. So for this one, I do want it to be associated with a DHCP. So we do have the DHCP server. It will hand out the proper IP address for that. So let's go ahead and click on Save. Okay. And then we want to create a few more. So that was smart lights. That was 400. Then we want 600. So let's go back over here to VLAN 600. And we want to select switch again. And from here we do office PCs. DHCP, and save. So hypothetically, we can have this port, let's see, number 600, we could have a specific IP address scheme. So say we wanted to do 10.3.0.1-24 and click on save. This means we could apply port 600 or VLAN 600 and it will have this specific IP address scheme. What we have to do alternatively though is create a new DHCP server that will be passing out IPs on this IP scheme. So to do that, we go over to services and create a new DHCP server. We give this a new name, Office PC. We give it a subnet of 10.3.0.1-24. Okay, so 10.3.0.0-24, and the range we want 10.3.0.2 to 10.0.30.254. The router is going to be 10.2.0.1. Actually, I think we could actually put the internet service provider router here. And then the DHCP, the DNS. So for DNS, let's just use Google. 8.8.8.8, 8.8.4.4. Click on save. And any devices connected to that VLAN now will get an automatic IP address. So we go back over to dashboard. And I'm going to pull up my map one more time. We want to create one more VLAN for 500. So VLAN, give it a number of 500. Interface switch. And description was, let's just put miss for miscellaneous items or miscellaneous items. IP address we want to keep as default. Actually, let's define a manual IP address too for this. So 10.4.0.1-24. And we do the same thing. We go back over to services, add a new DHCP server. This will be MISC. And the subnet is 10.4.0.0-24. And we just change the range start and change the 3 to a 4. Router, DNS servers, the same. And click on save. Okay, that's good. We deployed our 2 DNS server or DHCP servers for those 2 VLAN assigned ports on the switch. So as you can see, we have all of our VLANs here numbered. So now from here, we could actually assign each port with a VLAN. So just a quick side note for the 2 DHCP servers that we created, we actually want to change the router IP to reflect the same IP scheme. So it's 10.4.0.1, and for this network over here, we'll pull that up. For this one, we want to change it to 10.3.0.1 and click on save. Okay, so back over here, we could trunk ports by adding their port number or VLAN ID. So this is where you would add your trunk ports right here. However, I want each individual port to have a specific ID. So for port 1, I want to have the following. So this is where my smart devices are going to be plugged in. and that was for 400. So smart lights. So let's go ahead and click 400. ETH2, I wanted to have the VLAN of 600. That's for the specialized office computer. And for ETH3, let's see. ETH3, we want to give the following VLAN of 500 for miscellaneous. Click on save. And now each port, besides port 0, are configured on a specific VLAN. Internet ETH port 1 is VLAN 400, number 2 is 600, and number 3 is 500. So then from here, hypothetically, you connect a switch to these ports. The devices won't be able to communicate between those VLANs. So you would have your miscellaneous devices here, your office computers, they won't be able to communicate with the smart lights. And then you have your servers, they won't be able to communicate with your other two networks. So we click on save. 0 I didn't change because this is the actual administration console. If I change the PV ID, it might lock me out of the switch and the router, so I don't want to do that. So just keep note of that. So that's how to deploy VLANs for your edge router. Next is PPPoE. This is a type of protocol that allows you to have point-to-point protocol over the internet. And we are not using this protocol, so we are going to skip over this. And there's one thing to take note of. So for ETH4, it does have the capability to have power over the Ethernet. So that means that you could plug in a device that provides power, and it will send power to your router, essentially powering it on. And so let me go ahead and look at the photograph here. I think it might be passive, but then again, it might be active, which means that it could actually deliver and send power to other devices. So as you can see by this diagram, the router actually can take power inside of the router, which would power the router without having it plugged into a power source other than the Ethernet cord on your network. And then it also sends out power over the Ethernet cord on the 4th port. However, it looks like I could only configure power over the Ethernet with port 4. So if I go to port 0, click on actions, click on PoE, it says that this port is not supported. That's pretty interesting. But if we go to port 4, we click on PoE, you could activate power over the Ethernet, and you could select pass-through. It does give you a warning that you do want to have the proper voltage, and then you could also enable watchdog. However, I don't have any devices being powered with that port, so I will leave it off. But if you're trying to send power through port 4 and you don't want to run actual physical power to that device, this is a good solution for you. And finally, we have this overview, all the different settings over here, and then the services, general overview of the services. So next we want to click on traffic analysis. From here, this is pretty powerful tool. This gives you a graphical user-friendly interface on every single device and all the traffic that's running on all those devices. However, by default, it's disabled. So if we want to enable that, we just go over here to this operational status and click on enable. This will allow deep packet inspection for your devices. Click enable. And then hypothetically, you should see my device pop up here, unless it has a default IP. So there you go. It's pulling up 2 devices, 2 IPs. One being, I do believe, an Xbox 360, and the other being my computer. And as you can see, it breaks down the type of programs and the amount of usage of each computer. So if one of these servers was taking up most of the bandwidth, you would see this on this chart right here. You could also add categories such as apps, and names of apps. So if I wanted to create origin as a new category, you click on origin, click create new category, and then you just type up origin video game platform. So this keeps track of origin devices running in the background and how much data they use. Click save. White space needs to be removed. There we go. Save. It will create a new category, and then you could do actions. So that's the general overview for deep packet inspection. This could help you find rogue devices. This could help you find out which programs are using the most bandwidth. And this also helps system administrators pinpoint if a certain worker or computer is doing what it's supposed to. So if you see a lot of YouTube web pages and usage, and that computer's supposed to not be running YouTube at all, then you could sort of make a determination, okay, this device is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, and you could audit your network and security system from there. So if you were a service provider or a internet service provider such as Cox, Verizon, Spectrum, you would be able to develop your specific network criteria for your routers and your service. And so this is, once again, a very powerful router if you're an internet service provider, because you could create those specific routing metrics that reflect a proper routing system so you could deliver to clients. Inside of the routes, we have all of our routing tables. One thing I do want to show you is the black hole routes. So say you have hackers, they're trying to ping your network and they're just creating troubles with your VPNs or servers, and you say, you know what, I want to block them from our network. You create a black hole. Essentially what you do is you select static route, black hole, inside of the edge router, then you select the IP scheme. So let's go ahead and look up Shadow Server. Shadow Server is a pen testing company that scans the internet 45 times a day looking for vulnerabilities on the network. They work with law enforcement and businesses, and they basically create a more secure internet for the world. So they have servers that scan VPNs and certain services on the internet every day. We could block their servers by finding out their specific server address and then applying it to the network destination. So let's do that now. So as you can see, we're at this Shadow Server website, and Shadow Server is a foundation nonprofit security organization working behind the scenes to make the internet a more secure place for everyone. And so they scan the internet, like I said, 45 times a day. And this is their official website, but they do have servers that scan. Sometimes they scan my actual VPN, so I had to block them on certain edge routers. So it's best to start with them. So let's go ahead and go over here, and we will find a list of their IP addresses. Just give me one moment here. So one of their IP addresses is the following: 184.105.247.0-24. This will block all addresses on this network. Please enter a valid IP for or 004. So this should be valid, right? Yep, it's valid. And then we want to add a description. And there you go. So we're blocking all addresses from this network, and it will drop all attempts to access our network from this IP address. So let's go ahead and save. And hypothetically, if we try to ping that address, it shouldn't work. So we'll pull up one of their addresses. Give me one moment here. We go back over to Toolbox and we ping the address. Packet size, we will just do, let's see. What is the general packet size? Let me do a ping for something. So 32 bytes. And we will do 4. So 4 packet counts of 32 bytes. Run test. And as you can see, network is unreachable. We cannot reach that network. So this network cannot reach us. Essentially, if they try to come and attack this router, their IP and any activity from that IP is going to be directly dropped, and they're put into the black hole. So they're in the black hole and they cannot come out. So that's a way to block hackers, a very efficient way to block hackers inside of your edge router using static routes. So once again, you just go to routes, black hole, and then you enter in the destination. Typically, you could enter in one IP address, or if it's a group of hackers, you want to sort of block out their whole entire subnet. So the entire 255 IP addresses on that specific network. So that's how that works. And then there's other things that you could do for static routing. So say if you want another interface to connect to another subnet mask or another subnet, you could do that here. We won't do that for now because we don't have too many devices on here, but the concept is fairly easy and straightforward to understand. Okay, so let's go deeper into that topic by doing the following. So let's pull up the website. Let's go ahead and do ping-a www.shadowserver.org. This is giving us the IP of their website. So say if we want to block their website directly, we just take this IP address and we throw it right into the black hole. So we just copy, go over here to add static routes, black hole, add the IP address, and we do have to add a prefix to that, so we add 24, and then we just call this shadow server or shadow website. Save. Not a neutral network boundary. So let's go to 0. Okay, so we blocked the shadow website. So if we pull up their IP address once again from this, we go over here, copy, go back to Toolbox, ping that specific IP address. Packet size of 4, packet size of 32, sorry, packet count 4, run test. And as you can see, it can't get that network. It is not reachable. It cannot get to that website. So we could test that theory a little bit further by going to this website. I did do a refresh on this. However, I do have 2 network cards. So I have one connected to one router, the other connected to another router. But it did work. So as you can see, we cannot get to Shadow Server website anymore. So that's how to block websites, block certain services and IP addresses that you feel are a security threat to your network. For me, I will go ahead and disable that black hole because I do want to access their website. I actually do like to visit their website because I learn a lot of security techniques, and eventually, you know, I might want to consider joining Shadow Server and scanning the internet and working for them one day too as well. So we go ahead and delete that entry, but we will keep their servers, scanning servers on our list because I don't want their scanning servers to scan my network. So we will still keep that entry. And so that's how to block websites and to block hackers from entering in your network. Okay, as we visit the routes one more time. As you can see, I blackholed all of the shadow server scanning servers. So this in theory is what you would do if you found a group of hackers that were on a certain IP address attacking your network. You just block them using this method. Next is the Firewall and NAT tab. Inside of the first tab, you will find the port forwarding selection. This is where you would forward specific ports and specific services. So say if you had a web server, you would add the port here. So you would do TCP, you would add port 443. Your forward address is 443. And 443, let's see. This would be the IP address. So say if you had a server, web server at 10.2.0.9, you would have it there. Then you would call the description web server. You really want to be descriptive about the names of your port forwarding policies, so that way you know, okay, this server is forwarding this service, or it's acting as a web server, or a TPH server, or a FTP server. So just make note of that. You really want to use descriptive descriptions. And then you just click on apply. Okay, so now you have a port forwarding rule that allows you to forward a specific traffic, and then the WAN is 4. So we did have to select the WAN interface as number 4, which is delivering the connection to the internet. So go ahead and click on apply one more time. Let's click that. And there you go. It's been properly configured. To remove the rule, we just click on remove. Simple as that. So that's how to deploy certain virtual servers that you want to have available to the open public. So this would only be useful for, like I said, FTP servers, email servers, web servers, or application server that you're offering to the internet and the public abroad. So you could click on advanced options. You could add the specific LAN interface where that specific port rule is going to be applied. So you could really do some granular type of configuration with that. Okay, so inside the firewall policies, we can create new policies, rule sets, and define certain default actions for those rule sets. It could show all the dropped, rejected, and accepted rule sets. So what we want to do is prevent any of the users on the other ports to access the administration console for this router. So essentially you don't want them to get access to this router and change the configuration settings. They will have to be on a certain specific device, certain IP address. To do that, we want to create a new rule set. So let's go ahead and take note of our switches here. Let's take a new snip of this. And let's go back over to firewall policies. Click on new rule set. We will call this rule set VLAN 500 or 400, and we call this VLAN 400. The default action we want to drop. We want to drop any connection to this area, and we do want to default log. This logs when default action takes place. Click save. And as you can see, there is no rules for that policy. So we go into actions and we go to configuration. From here, we want to click on the rules and add a new rule. So when we add the new rule, we want to type in allow DHCP we click on enable, we click on accept. UDP is the protocol. We want logging to be enabled. Then we scroll over to destination and we allow the port 67. Click save. And as you can see, we have the description allow DHCP, port 67, UDP, accept. Add a new rule, and that would be to allow the DNS. Accept, enable, logging, UDP for the protocol. Go to destination, click on the port, and select 53, and then click save. Save rule order. And there you go, you have the rule order, and this should reflect the proper configuration to disallow people from VLAN 400 to access the router's console. Okay, so one last thing that we did need to add is go over to configuration for the VLAN 400, scroll over to interfaces, and we want to select switch 0.400, direction local, save rule set, and close. So this should be the perimeters for that rule set to prevent users on VLAN 400 to access this interface. We could test this theory by unplugging our computer from this specific port, plugging the port into VLAN 400, and testing out to see if we could access the console. Okay, as you can see, we plugged into Ethernet port 1, that's VLAN 400 that we just created, and we blocked access to the interface for the router. So that means that anybody that's on that VLAN, they will still be able to get an IP address. However, they will not be able to access the site. They will be completely locked out of changing the router's information. So this is good to say if you're running a small business, you have people on different VLANs, and you have your management VLAN. You don't want workers in accounting and sales and any other part of your office to access the router's login. And this prevents anybody from logging in or accidentally logging in and changing your router configurations. So it really locks down the network and makes it more secure. In the next video, we will go over more detailed information about the Edge Router X and all the other services that it provides. This was the general overview, the first part series of this router video. If you enjoyed this video, please like, and don't hesitate to contact Telefox for all your consulting needs. You have a good afternoon.